Good morning, good evening, all. Our presentation will cover the subject of Power BI integration with HPCC. We will cover an effective and simple method of integration in this topic. I am Srinivasan and I have been employed with LexisNexis Risk ITTC Insurance Division for over 3 years. My primary responsibility is ECL development for both TAR and Roxy environments. With me, I have Harsh Raj. Harsh, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone. My name is Harsh Raj. I'm a software engineer one at LexisNexis Risk Solution ITTC team. I have recently joined LexisNexis Risk Solution as a full-time employee. Before that, I was part of the HPCC internship program where I got this opportunity to work on this interesting project. Now, moving forward, Srinivasan will be explaining about the agenda of our presentation. And now we'll move to the next slide.
Thus, this is the schedule for our talk. We will mainly talking about the integration of Power BI with HPCC and the current and legacy methods that were in use. And we are also going to discuss the shortcomings of each and every single technique that has been deployed now. And we'll also give a thorough justification of the novel approach that we are going to propose and the detailed explanation of integration using the suggested approach. And also, we are going to discuss about the benefits with the suggested method. So this is the legacy method one, which is currently used in integrating the HPCC with Power BI. So what we will do means, yeah, it is a normal process. We'll be moving the file to the landing zone. I'm talking about the raw files. All the raw files will be moved to the landing zone. From landing zone, it will be sprayed into tar cluster. And in tar cluster, after the spray job is done, the EDA, ETL step, ELT, all these things were done. These things were done for preparing and processing the data set in the form of dimensions and facts. We need these dimension and facts for all the data warehousing process, right? Normally we do all this process. So once the facts and dimensions datasets were created, the logical files for those facts and dimensions were created. It was displayed into the landing zone as flat files. Either it may be delimited or fixed file or in any format. Then after delimiting, all the displayed files are again loaded into and corresponding tables in RDBMS like MySQL and MS SQL. Then the data from the RDBMS was consumed by Power BI for report and visualization purpose. Yeah, this is the second method. It has the same similar steps which we covered in the first, the legacy method one. All the things, moving the files to landing zone, spraying the data, and performing the tar refinery process for creating dimensions and facts. Everything remains same. The only thing is the storage layer where we have to display the file has been removed. Instead of displaying the file and ingesting the data into an RDBMS server, the ingesting process into an RDBMS server was taken care of using the MySQL embed method. So the storage layer has been removed from here. From MySQL or any other RDBMS, the Power BI can consume the data for creating the visualization and reports. Okay, this is the third method. In this method, the data is already, the same, the spray process, everything remains the same. And data refinery was done using the tar cluster. Once everything was refined, the data has been processed into a consumable data sets. Then index and keys were built on top of these processed files. So once the index and key files were created, then these were being shipped to into a suitable Roxy environment. Roxy queries, and ECL programs which will be deployed on top of these keys and index files. And the query which we deployed in the Roxy environments will be called from an ESP, and Power BI will be doing an SOAP call with the ESP for consuming the data from that particular Roxy query. It is a normal Roxy request. Whatever we do in a normal Roxy environment, yeah, Roxy request was created in form of some XML thing, and for that the response will be recorded in the Power BI, and that particular response will be utilized for reporting purpose. These are the drawbacks of the legacy methods which I have explained just now. The first method requires an external storage layer and RDMS for consuming the data processed in HPCC from Power BI. And the second method bypasses the usage of storage layer, but still it requires an RDBMS system for ingesting the processed data, and then the RDBMS system was connected with Power BI for creating reports using the processed data. The method 3 bypasses the RDBMS system storage layer, but the query which we deployed in the Roxy will be very static. From Power BI point of view, if we need more data or change the underlying logic in reading the keys, need for it leads to a redeployment of queries, code change management system. Everything will be needed for modifying those underlying logic. So, so to overcome all these drawbacks of existing method, we have come with our proposed method. From this point, Ash will take us through the underlying designs and steps for using the proposed method.
So, till now, I hope everyone has understood the three legacy methods that Srini has just shared with us, and we came to know about their drawbacks and what point they were actually failing us. Not just failing in the process-wise, I'm talking about failing in terms of the efficiency that we are trying to achieve. So now we are proposing a new architecture or flow of data through which we can make this process more efficient. So for this, what we are planning to use WS to gap the bridge between our Power BI and our HPCC system. And basically, what we'll be doing is using Power Query in Power BI to connect to the WS by sending a SOAP request, and which in then will connect with our HPCC system via ESP platform and fetch the data using the simple SQL query, which will be given as an input in our WS And since it's an end-to-end SOAP request, so we can directly give that SQL request in our Power Query itself, and it will connect us to the HPCC server to extract the data. So this was a proposed system, but we need to know what all technologies or what all tools we have been going forward with. So first and foremost, we have done an HPCC deployment in our local machine, that is WSL. For us, it's for Ubuntu 22. The reason for doing it in our local machine was it's still under development process, still under research process. So we didn't want it to disturb the already existing clusters. So we have done it locally here. Second and the most important component of our project is WS So WS is basically will be as a connector between our HPCC system and Power BI. It will actually help us retrieval of data using a simple SQL query, and is working as a gateway between them. Moving forward, we have our SOAP API. The SOAP call is we've been keep mentioning in the architecture. The SOAP is basically a protocol that we'll be using over the web to exchange data and extracting data. It is basically moving data in XML format for us. And last but not the least, on which we are trying to achieve all this goal is our Power BI, which we all in almost every industry use for visualization and business intelligence capabilities. Now, moving forward, let's talk about some of the pros of the methods that we are proposing. These methods, the pros that we are proposing are basically countering the drawbacks that we had for three legacy methods. First and foremost, we'll go with the storage saved. Previous legacy methods were using some external parties to store the data. Now that is not required to us, as our data can be directly fetched from the HPCC server itself. Hence providing us more space for external work that does not require HPCC system directly. Second, it actually saves us the cost. Since we now no longer need the external servers or external storage system to store our data, we don't need to pay the third-party provider for it. Third, and which is now currently the most useful thing for us, is time. So we will be reducing the time of our entire process rather than moving our file to an external source and storing it and then again connecting it to our Power BI and our HPCC system. We don't need to do that. Direct connection we can make between our Power BI and our HPCC system, basically reducing our time. Fourth, dynamic extraction. By dynamic extraction, we are trying to cut down the drawback of the legacy 3 method, which was that every time if we want to change in the data extraction process or the file, we had to go every time to the Roxy query to make changes. While in this case, the data extraction process through WS SQL and the SOAP request can be made directly in the Power Query in our Power BI. We don't have to go to any third party to make any changes. So now let's talk in a detail about our process and what all deployments and how we have actually achieved it. So first and foremost, as I mentioned, we have gone forward with the local deployment of our HPCC system. So for that, we have uses our WSL and which is Ubuntu 22, and the above screenshot, as everyone can see, is just the initialization of our HPCC system. Once that is done, our ECL watch can be accessed from our local host 18010, ESP port from 8002. And if any configuration changes we want to go forward, we can access that from port 8015, all in now running locally in our laptops. Moving forward, the important component I've been mentioning again and again, WS SQL, which is basically helping us to extraction of data, will be available for us at localhost 8510. Most of our current HPCC platform versions have already WS SQL pre-installed, so it will already be connected to our once our system is up and running, so we don't need to worry about separately installing this. Now, the process we have been talking about, the SOAP request. What is this SOAP request? What is the process through which we are extracting data? So in the previous slide, I was just showing you the glimpse of the terminal of how the WS SQL looks. So in that, when we go to our execute SQL, we are on the top right, we can see this box appears for us where we can just write a simple SQL query to extracting the data. We just need to make sure that the file name is given correctly, and certain information that I will talk about later needs to be provided here. Once that is done, we can click on the SOAP test, and on the bottom right image, you can see on the ECL watch, it sent confirmation that our SOAP request was sent. So basically, this will help us getting a confirmation that our connections have been working properly, because again, as I mentioned, we are doing a local installation. So we need to make sure that WS SQL, whatever request we are sending it to our ECL is extracted at the correct place. Now let's dive in deep about our WS SQL query and how does it look and what is the response that we are getting. So the SOAP test that I just talked about in the previous slide. So what we do when we write our simple SQL query and we just press on the SOAP test, we are presented with this screen. So on the left hand side is our WS SQL query. Make sure that this is a very important part of our future development of code that we have actually presented, which will be used in our Power Query in Power BI. This part is actually helping us extracting data from WS SQL using a simple SQL query from our HPCC system. And on the right-hand side, we can see the data getting extracted in an XML format. As we have mentioned before, also the SOAP request and WS SQL communicates through an XML format, so the data extracted is in an XML. Once that is done, we can dive a little deep and give a small information about what was the WS SQL query that we are getting. So there are three most important components, and I think for the time being in the research purpose, three components that we need to worry about. First is our SQL query. That's selecting everything from our file. We need to make sure that the file path is given correctly. The second important part is need to mention the username, which here is a default username that we have given. And third is our cluster, which again, we are using the Thor cluster here. So we need to mention our cluster while giving. These are the three parameters that we need to make sure whenever we are extracting our data through WS SQL or in future with our Power BI using our Power BI. Now let's focus on the connection part. Now we have talked about all the different aspects, what all features we had. Now we'll dive a little deep in how we do the connection end to end. So for this purpose, we have taken a sample file, that's a movie ratings file that we have used, and we have sprayed, and the data is now available with us in our ECL watch. So now the next step will be to using our WS SQL query to extract the data using SOAP test and SOAP request that we'll send you. Now, the code that we have been talking about all around, what is the code that will be running in our Power Query in our Power BI to extract the data? So, on the right half of the screen, we can see the code that we have been mentioning about. So, this code is basically divided into two key and very important parts. The first part is the same code that we were able to generate from a simple SOAP test that we did on WC. First half of the code is responsible for connecting it to WS SQL and WS SQL extracting the data for us. Now that data is coming in XML format, as I have mentioned before. So in that case, the second half of the code comes into play. The second half of the code works on decoding of our XML response into a tabular textual format, which can be easily understood by our Power BI. Now let's understand a little bit more about our code and what actually we are trying to achieve here. So code sense basically it actually does a connection of about with our SOAP envelope, and we first convert our XML data into a binary format, and so that we can extract information like the start position and the end position of it, and we finally convert it into a textual format and use function like xml.tables to store it into a table structure and extract table variable for it. So the table variable will be the final output that we want to extract. Now the XML data has been already converted into textual format, and it now can be brought back into Power BI for our further analysis. Now we have everything ready with us, code is ready with us, every step we now know. So now let's focus on the final phase of it. This is our Power BI, how exact steps we are going to follow so that we can extract our data. So step one is creation of the blank query. In Power BI, we have to go to the get data. Previous legacy methods, every time we have to go to get data, we have to connect it to some external source like MySQL or any cloud platform or anything else. But now we don't need to worry about that. We can just go there. We can select on a blank query. It will open a query once for us. When we go to the transform data option, we can go to the advanced editor and we can just copy paste the code that we have just shown you. The only thing we need to worry about in that code is just to focus on the parameters. The parameters that I mentioned, the SQL query, the username, and the cluster that we're using. Once that is done, our data will be easily accessible to us. On the top right and the bottom right, we can see how the steps automates itself as soon as we run the query. And on the bottom right, we can see how data is now accessible and visible to us. Once data is available to us, we can move forward with our different type of visualization, different type of business insights that we want to achieve. And the entire cycle has been achieved without involving any third or external party or external data storage. This basically helps us provide a direct connection between Power BI and our HPCC system using our WS SQL and SOAP request. And then we can, as you can see here, we can do a lot of different type of analysis and extract whatever business insights and information we want to get. Now, moving forward, we'll give a small demo of how we have actually run through this program and how we have achieved through our goals. Few steps we have already done and made sure that it's up and running so that this process goes out smoothly, but we'll try to make sure that we give a live demo and see how everything works. So now we will start with the demo time. We'll first and foremost start and give a little introduction about our WSL. As I was mentioning, we have done a local installation. So just on my screen, we have opened our Ubuntu 22 and we have we have to just access as a user and we give our credentials and then we just initialize our HPCC systems. Whenever we do that, we do get some errors of this, some targets hitting a failure, but not to worry about that. That's an internal issue that it's facing. Our ECL watch is up and running. To make sure that it's up and running, we'll go to our preferred choice of our whatever um, platform we have been using. For us, it's Edge. So we go there and we go to our local port and we can just check on our local host 8010 and it will be accessible for us. As you can see, it is up and running for me and there's no issue in terms of that. And on the local host 8510, our WS SQL is accessible and it is running. So we have taken, as I've mentioned, we have taken a movie ratings data as a sample. So we have, again, we start with the basic process. Everyone, I'm pretty sure, must be knowing about it. So I won't go in a deep, just breeze through it. We upload our file. And then we go to our ECL IDE. Since ECL IDE, we'll have to do some configurations because it's running on our local system. So we go to our preferences and just provide some server IP, which for us will be localhost, and rest all configurations will be done automatically. Once that is done, we can click on OK, and our ECL ID will be up and running and connected to our ECL watch. We don't need to worry much about here. We just need to select our data and we just spray the data for us, and we cross check that if the data is running for us or not, and then we'll have the results with us. Once that is done, when the files is pushed, it's up and running in our ECL watch. That part is skipped. Now we can move forward with the most important part is of our SOAP test, so that we can extract the first part of the code that is most important first. So we'll take a sample file here. Let's say we just have pushed this movie ratings file, and we have it here with us. So the only thing that we need to make sure is that we copy paste the correct file path name for us. And we'll go to our WS SQL. We'll click on our execute SQL. In SQL text, we'll give up a very simple query, which will be select everything from our file name. We'll give a file path. Username default will giving as add, because for some reason I gave that as a default name. Target cluster for us here is Thor. We can unselect other options because that's not needed for us. This basically are wait times, result limits, and all. It's not important for us for the time being at the current rate. Then we can go click on the SOAP test, and here, as I was been mentioning in our PPT, our first half of the code, the WS SQL code, is available on the left screen for us. And we can just simply click on send request. And one second, yeah, one second. I think there's some issue. Let me try with some second. We'll just make sure the file name we're giving it correctly so that there's no issue with this. Once we did this, we'll try to send the request again and see. Okay. I think let's cross check if our ECL watch is up and running or not. Just refresh it. Sometimes this issue we face here, so we'll make sure that's up and running and we don't have any problem with that. Can again go to our execute SQL, can select giving our correct file name. We'll cross check once again. Sorry for that if we are giving correct file name or not. Go to our builder. Yeah, this is the file here. And select every other options not needed for us. And again, click on the SOAP test. Hopefully, I think we are facing some issue with the invalid target name. Yeah, sorry, I understood my mistake. Sorry so much for that. Yeah, as you can see, it's taking some time because now it is hitting to our ECL watch and trying to extract the data for us. It will take a couple of seconds because it will be generating data for us. Yeah. So as you see, it worked, and we are now able to get our data in our XML format. The error I was making was the spelling of Thor. It's not T capital, it's T small. So it's case sensitive. People need to make sure that. And once we are able to do that, we have our data fetched here. So now we know that our connection has been made and it's up and working. To cross check if it's working properly or not, we can go to our work unit, and we can just go to here, one second, and we can click here. We will just refresh to see if the connections has been made properly or not. We click on this. And yes, you can see our WSQL job has been just been initialized and it has been able to give us and extract the data. Once the connection's been made, when we are up and sure that it's working properly, we'll go to our Power BI. And for Power BI, we'll go for a sample of starting it from scratch and see how the data extraction basically works. So this is our Power BI desktop. We'll go to our get data option and we'll just click on our blank query. Previously used to select SQL Server and whatnot. So we'll click on our blank query and it will open it for us. As I mentioned, once we click on our query, we need to go to the advanced editor option. We'll click on our advanced editor option. And for this live demo purpose, we have already prepared the script for our users. So we just need to copy paste this script there. And yeah, we'll come here. We'll copy paste the script. So as I just mentioned, the first half of the script will be containing the WSQL code, which will be our selecting of our data through SQL. Our username, the cluster name, again, please make sure that we add the correct naming and nomenclature. And the second part of the code, which will be converting our XML response to binary and then to a textual format and then storing it into a table. And once we click on the done option, as you can see, multiple number of applied steps here. That's the process of extracting the data, and voila, we have our data up and running and with us stored here. We just need to click on close and apply. And yeah, we'll have our data. It will now run the queries and evaluating the queries. And hopefully it will load the data in just a couple of seconds. It's waiting for localhost to respond. That's our ECL watch. Yeah. So it has loaded all the data for us. And if we can just now go and see, we can have our data available with us. See here. Query 2, all our data are available with us. We can go and start with our visualization as quickly as we want. We can have our movie ratings and our movie IDs associated with it, and we can move forward with our visualization. And the entire process is now very smooth compared to what it was previously. So yeah, that has been our demo and our presentation. And if any queries or anything that people want to ask, we are more than welcome to answer. And thank you for providing us this opportunity to give forward our different approach of solving this problem. And I'd like to thank again Srini and the entire HPCC team for providing us this opportunity. Thank you so much.